The cold metal floor bit through the thin tarp like teeth. Rasha pulled her youngest daughter closer, feeling the tiny body shiver against her chest. Around them, the cargo tarp that served as their home flapped and snapped in the artificial wind from broken ventilation ducts. This was the lowest deck of Waypoint 7 where gravity barely worked and nobody important ever came. Nira coughed again. The sound rattled in her small chest like rocks in a can. Rasha pressed her scaled hand against the child's forehead and felt the fever burning there. 2 years old and sick more often than healthy. The recycling plant paid barely enough for food, let alone medicine. Mama, I'm cold. Pip sat up from where he slept with his brother Sewell. At 8 years old, he tried to be brave, but his voice shook. Come here, little flame. Rasha opened her other arm and both boys crawled into her embrace. Her body heat helped, but not enough. Not in this place where frost formed on the tent walls every night cycle. She had been an engineer once. Back home, before the bombs fell and the sky turned black with smoke. Before her mate died holding a barricade so others could escape. Before 3 years of running and hiding and struggling just to keep her children breathing. A sharp crack echoed through their small space. Rasha looked up and saw a new tier in the tarp above them. The material was old, patched too many times already. Through the rip she could see the rusted pipes and broken lights of the station's underbelly. Stay here. She laid Nira down gently and stood up. Her legs ached from the double shift at the plant. Sorting trash and breaking down scrap metal for hours until her scales were dull with grime. But the tier needed fixing before the temperature dropped even more. She had saved a piece of plastic sheeting for emergencies. It wasn't much, just something she'd pulled from the recycling line when the supervisor wasn't watching. Her claws worked quickly, trying to stretch the plastic over the hole, but it was too small and too brittle. The plastic cracked in her hands. Rasha stood there holding the useless pieces, feeling something break inside her chest that had nothing to do with plastic. How much longer could she keep doing this? How much longer before Nira's cough became something worse? Before Pip stopped asking questions and Sewell forgot how to smile? Need some help with that? She spun around, instinctively putting herself between her children and the stranger. A human man stood a few feet away, hands visible and empty. He wore the gray coveralls of a station mechanic with tool belts hanging from his waist. His hair was brown and messy, and he looked tired in the way people do when they've worked too long. We're fine. Rasha kept her voice steady. Humans could be kind or cruel, and you never knew which until it was too late. That tier's going to get bigger. The man gestured at the rip. Pressure fluctuations in this section are bad. Whole thing might come down if it's not sealed right. I said we're fine. Pip peeked out from behind her leg. What's that? He pointed at something clipped to the man's belt. A small device with lights blinking along its side. The man's face softened. He knelt down slowly, making himself smaller and less threatening. It's a thermal sealer. Melts plastic and metal together real strong. He unclipped it and held it out where Pip could see. You interested in tools, kid? Pip nodded eagerly. Sewell appeared beside his brother, curious but silent as always. Don't talk to strangers. Rasha's voice came out harsher than she meant. Smart advice. The man stood back up and looked at her directly. Name's Owen. I work on environmental systems for the station. Saw your tent from the maintenance catwalk. That sealed job there? He pointed at one of her earlier patches. That's good work, real good. You do that yourself? Rasha said nothing, but she didn't need to. Pride and desperation fought in her chest. Nira coughed again, harder this time. The sound made Owen's expression change. He'd heard that kind of cough before. Everyone who lived on stations had. It was the sound of lungs struggling in bad air. Look, I'm not trying to cause trouble. Owen kept his voice gentle. But that little one needs better air circulation. And your tent needs proper sealing. I've got materials that'll actually hold. Just let me patch it up. 10 minutes of work, that's all. Why? The question came out before Rasha could stop it. Because nobody should have to live like this. Owen said it simply, like it was the most obvious thing in the world. Especially not kids. Rasha wanted to refuse. Wanted to tell him to leave them alone. But Nira coughed again and Pip was shivering and Sewell just stared with those big eyes that had seen too much for a 6-year-old. Her pride meant nothing compared to their safety. Fine. The word tasted like defeat, but I don't take charity. I'll pay you back. Fair enough? Owen pulled out his thermal sealer and some rolls of heavy-duty sealant from his belt. You can pay me back by telling me where you learned to patch like that. Been doing this work for 15 years and I've never seen someone jury-rig a hold seal with scrap plastic. He worked while he talked, his hands quick and sure. The thermal sealer hummed as it bonded new material to old. Within minutes the tear was gone, replaced by a strong seal that wouldn't crack in the cold. There. That should hold for a while. Owen stood and brushed off his knees. Then he unclipped something else from his belt. A small silver blanket folded tight. This is a thermal sheet. Reflects body heat back. It's extra. We get lots of extras in maintenance. Rasha knew that was a lie. But she took the blanket anyway and wrapped it around Nira. The child's shivering stopped almost immediately. Thank you. The words came hard. But they came. No problem. Owen headed toward the exit, then paused. You know, I might have some work available. Real work, not sorting trash. Pays better, too. If you're interested, my shop's in Section 12, mid-levels. Name's on the door. He left before Rasha could respond. She stood there holding her daughter, feeling the warmth from the thermal blanket, staring at the newly sealed tear in their tent roof. Pip tugged on her arm. Mama, is he coming back? I don't know, little flame, but part of her hoped he would. Rasha's hands moved automatically, breaking down the metal casing of a broken air filter into recyclable pieces. Her mind was somewhere else entirely. 3 days had passed since the human mechanic had fixed their tent. 3 days of looking at the small card he'd left behind with his shop address printed on it. The supervisor's whistle shrieked across the recycling floor. End of shift. Rasha's muscles ached as she stood. 12 hours of standing and sorting and breathing in metal dust and chemical fumes. For this, she earned barely enough to feed 3 growing children. She walked home through the refugee district, past families huddled in makeshift shelters similar to her own. A Krillian woman nodded at her. An elderly Vorian man sat outside his tent staring at nothing. They were all trapped here together, too poor for proper housing, too foreign for anyone to care. When she pushed through the tent flap, she found Pip sitting cross-legged on the floor. He'd arranged bits of scrap metal into patterns, trying to figure out how they fit together. Sol sat beside him, drawing pictures on a broken data pad someone had thrown away. Nira slept under the thermal blanket, her breathing easier than it had been in months. Mama. Pip jumped up. Look, I made a joint that moves. He showed her 2 pieces of metal connected with a bit of wire, demonstrating how they pivoted. That's good work, little flame. She ruffled his hair, feeling her heart squeeze. He was smart. They all were. But what future did smart children have when they lived in a tent? That night after the children slept, Rasha pulled out the card. Section 12, mid-levels. She'd never been to the mid-levels. Refugees stayed in the lower decks where nobody had to see them or think about them. But the card was still in her hand and Nira's cough had come back that afternoon. And Pip deserved better than sorting trash. She made her decision. The next morning, she left the children with the Krillian woman who lived 2 tents over. The mid-levels were different, cleaner. The lights actually worked. People walked with purpose instead of desperation. Rasha felt out of place with her dulled scales and worn clothes. But she kept walking until she found Section 12. Owen's shop sat between a food vendor and a parts supplier. The sign read Owen's Repair and Maintenance in simple letters. Through the window, she could see shelves of equipment and a workbench covered in tools. She almost turned around, almost went back to the recycling plant and her tent and the life she knew. But then the door opened and Owen stood there, wiping grease from his hands with a rag. Rasha, wasn't sure I'd see you again. His smile seemed genuine. Come in. The shop was warm. That was the first thing she noticed. Warm and well lit and full of the smell of machine oil and metal. Owen gestured to a stool by the workbench. You said you might have work. Rasha remained standing. What kind of work? Repair work. Fixing equipment, maintaining systems, solving problems. Owen pointed at a dismantled pump on the bench. This cooling pump is from a residential building. Owner says it's broken. I say it just needs cleaning and a new seal. But I'm backed up 3 weeks on jobs. Could use help. I've never been trained. But you know how things work. I saw your repairs on that tent. That's not luck, that's understanding. Owen picked up the pump. Want to take a look? Rasha moved closer. Her eyes traced the pump's components, seeing how they connected, where the seal had failed, why the owner thought it was broken when it just needed maintenance. Her claws were precise as she pointed out the problem areas. See? You've got the eye for it. Owen set the pump down. Pay is 30 credits an hour. 6-hour shifts to start. You can work around your schedule. 30 credits an hour. That was 3 times what the recycling plant paid. Rasha's breath caught. With that money, she could save for real housing. Could buy medicine for Nira. Could feed her children proper meals. What's the catch? No catch. I need help, you need work, Owen paused. Though there is one thing. The shop isn't big and I know you've got kids. I don't have childcare arrangements or anything fancy. But there's a back room. It's warm, got a food dispenser safe. If you need to bring them while you work, that's fine. Rasha stared at him. People didn't do this. Didn't offer good jobs and accommodation and kindness all at once. There had to be something he wanted. Why are you helping us? Owen was quiet for a moment. When he spoke, his voice carried old pain. I had a family once. Wife and daughter. Station accident 5 years ago. Pressure seal failed in their section. He looked at the tools on his bench. I couldn't fix it. Couldn't save them. So now I fix things I can fix. Help people I can help. Maybe it doesn't balance the scales, but it's something. Rasha understood that kind of loss. Understood working to forget. Helping others because you couldn't help the ones you loved. She thought of her mate dying so others could live. Maybe that's what humans did too. Maybe grief and hope look the same across species. I'll work hard. I know you will. Owen extended his hand. After a moment, Rasha took it. His skin was soft compared to her scales, warm and alive. Start tomorrow? She nodded. Walking back to the refugee district felt different. The card in her pocket wasn't just paper anymore. It was possibility. When she reached the tent, the Krillian woman smiled knowingly. Pip bombarded her with questions about where she'd been. Sewell watched quietly, but his eyes were bright. Nira reached up to be held. That night, Rasha told them about the shop. About the warm back room in the food dispenser and the work that paid real money. Pip asked if he could watch her fix things. Sewell asked if there would be other children around. Nira just held on to her tighter. Does this mean we can leave the tent? Pip's voice was small and hopeful. Maybe, little flame. Maybe soon. For the first time in 3 years, Rasha let herself believe it might be true. 2 months had changed everything and nothing. Rasha's hands were steadier now, confident as they rewired a control panel for a customer's heating system. The shop had become familiar. She knew which tools hung where, which parts sat on which shelves, how Owen liked his workspace organized. The children sat in the back room. Pip had a broken circuit board spread in front of him, trying to identify each component. Sol drew pictures of the machines he saw in the shop. Nira played with plastic connectors, building towers and knocking them down with delighted giggles. They were healthier now, better fed. Nira hadn't coughed in weeks, but they still lived in the tent. Rasha had been saving every credit, but proper housing cost thousands. Deposits, fees, citizenship verification. The numbers never seemed to add up right. Owen walked in from a house call, removing his work gloves. Got 3 more jobs lined up for next week. You free Thursday? Yes. Rasha didn't mention that she was always free, that her entire life revolved around work and children and sleeping in a tent that still leaked when the pressure systems fluctuated. Good. Owen pulled up a stool beside her bench. Listen, I've been thinking about something. Wanted to run it by you. Rasha's guard went up immediately. Here it came. The real reason for his kindness. The payment he expected. I own a residential unit, mid-level, section 14. 2 bedrooms, kitchen, bathroom. Real walls, climate control, the works. Owen spoke carefully, watching her face. It's been empty since my family died. Can't seem to bring myself to sell it, but leaving it vacant doesn't make sense either. Rasha's claws stopped moving on the control panel. She knew where this was going and hated it. I'm not a charity case. I know. That's not what I'm saying. Owen pulled out a data pad and showed her a contract. This is a rental agreement. You pay monthly rent. Maintain the mechanical systems in the building and the place is yours. Legal and proper. I can't afford mid-level housing. The rent's set at what you're making now, what you can actually pay. Owen scrolled through the contract terms. You'd be doing me a favor, honestly. Empty units attract squatters, and the building management has been after me to find a maintenance person. You'd handle that as part of the arrangement. Rasha read through the contract slowly, every word, every clause, looking for the trap, the hidden cost, the thing that would make this fall apart. But it was straightforward. Almost too straightforward. Why? Because watching you wake up with frost in your hair every morning is killing me. Owen's voice was rough. Because those kids deserve beds and regular meals and not being scared all the time. Because you're the best worker I've ever had and you're wasting energy just surviving when you could be actually living. The truth of it hit Rasha hard. She'd been surviving, just surviving. For 3 years that had been enough. But somewhere along the way her children had started hoping again. Pip talked about becoming an engineer. Sewell had made friends with a human boy who came into the shop sometimes. Nira called Owen uncle now. I need to think about it. Take your time. Owen stood and went back to his workbench, giving her space. But Pip had been listening from the doorway. Mama, is he talking about a real home? Go back to the room, little flame. But Mama, now. Pip's face fell, but he obeyed. Sewell took his hand and led him away. Rasha heard their whispered conversation, heard the hope and excitement in Pip's voice that she was about to crush. She finished the control panel repair in silence. When the customer came to pick it up, she processed the payment automatically. Owen handled another job. The shop closed for the evening. The children gathered their things. Walking back to the refugee district, Pip was unusually quiet. Sewell held Nira's hand. They passed the tent rows, the makeshift shelters, the people who'd become their community through shared struggle. Inside their tent, Rasha prepared their evening meal. Dried protein packets reconstituted with hot water. Not enough, but what they could afford. The children ate without complaining. They'd learned not to expect more. After they slept, Rasha sat with the contract on her data pad. Read it again and again, looking for the cost, the trap, the moment when this dream would turn into something ugly. But Owen had lost a family too. Maybe he understood that sometimes you helped people because you couldn't help the ones you lost. Maybe humans weren't so different from draconids in that way. She thought about Pip's question, about a real home, about walls that didn't flap in the wind and beds that weren't just blankets on cold metal floors, about Nira growing up healthy instead of sick, about Sewell having space to draw without cramping his hands in the cold. The decision should have been easy. But accepting help felt like admitting defeat, like saying she couldn't do this alone. Pride was the last thing she had left from her old life, from being an engineer with status and respect. If she gave that up, what remained? Pip stirred in his sleep. Home, he mumbled. Real home. Rasha looked at her children, really looked at them. They were growing despite everything, but they could grow better, could thrive instead of merely surviving. And wasn't that what mattered? Not her pride, but their chance at real life? She pulled out her comm device and typed a message to Owen. Her claws hesitated over the send button for a long moment. Then she pressed it. The message was simple. When can we move in? The response came almost immediately. Tomorrow. I'll bring a transport cart. Rasha set down the comm and let out a breath she'd been holding for 3 years. Maybe this was a mistake. Maybe it would all fall apart. But for the first time since fleeing her homeworld, she was choosing to hope instead of just survive. Pip was right. They were going home. A real home. The tent suddenly felt even smaller than usual. But tomorrow it wouldn't matter. Tomorrow they'd have walls. Tomorrow they'd have a home. Tomorrow they'd start living again. Everything they owned fit into 3 salvaged cargo containers. Rasha stacked them on Owen's transport cart while neighbors watched from their tents. Some smiled and offered blessings. Others looked away, their faces showing the bitterness of being left behind. The Krillian woman pressed a small carved stone into Rasha's hand. For luck in your new home, she whispered. You deserve this. So do you, Rasha replied. But they both knew luck didn't work that way. The cart hummed as Owen guided it through the station corridors, moving up from the lower decks where refugees clustered. Pip and Sewell walked close to their mother, eyes wide as the surroundings changed. Cleaner floors, working lights, people who walked without hunching their shoulders against constant cold. Is it far? Pip asked for the 3rd time. Not far, little flame. Nira rode on top of the cargo containers, clapping her hands each time they passed something new. A viewport showing stars, a food vendor with actual fresh fruit, a group of human children playing some game with a glowing ball. This was a different world, just levels above where they'd been sleeping. The residential building in Section 14 looked ordinary to Owen. To Rasha, it looked like something from the life she'd lost. Real doors, sealed windows, a security panel that actually worked, Other families came and went, carrying shopping bags and talking about normal things like homework and dinner plans. Home is Unit 42. Fourth floor. Owen led them to an elevator that moved smoothly, without the grinding sounds and jolts of the cargo lifts Rasha was used to. The hallway on the fourth floor was clean and quiet. Owen stopped at a door marked with the number 42 and pressed his palm to the security panel. The door slid open. Rasha stepped inside and forgot how to breathe. 2 bedrooms, an actual kitchen with a food preparation area and storage, a bathroom with running water and a shower stall, a living space with seating and a view screen. The walls were solid and clean. The air was warm and fresh. Real floors, not metal grating. Real lighting, not flickering emergency tubes. Mama, look. Pip ran to the window. I can see the gardens. Sewell stood in the middle of the living space, turning slowly, trying to take in everything at once. Nira wiggled to be put down and immediately toddled toward one of the bedrooms, shrieking with delight at the echo her voice made. Owen brought in their cargo containers. Kitchen's fully equipped. Bathroom works on standard controls. Climate system is here. He showed Rasha the panel. You're in charge of building maintenance, so you'll want to know where everything connects. Rasha barely heard him. She was staring at the kitchen, remembering the one in her home before the war. Different layout, different world, but the same basic promise. A place to prepare food for her family. A place to gather and eat together. Normal things. Simple things she'd lost and never thought she'd have again. I'll let you settle in. Owen headed for the door. If you need anything, stay. The word came out before Rasha realized she'd spoken. Stay for dinner. It's the least I can do, Owen smiled. Yeah, okay. I'd like that. Rasha unpacked their few belongings while Owen helped the children explore. She heard their laughter from the bedrooms, heard Pip asking excited questions about how everything worked. In the kitchen, she found cooking equipment she'd only dreamed about for 3 years. She prepared a traditional Draconid meal, spiced meat cooked at high heat, the way her people had done for generations, the kitchen filled with smoke and rich smells. Then an alarm shrieked through the apartment. The door burst open. 2 station security officers rushed in, weapons drawn. Step back from the stove, now! Rasha's body moved on instinct, putting herself between the officers and her children. Her scales flushed dark with stress chemicals. This was it. The moment it all fell apart. Owen appeared, hands raised. Officers, wait. This is a cultural misunderstanding. She's preparing traditional food. No emergency. The fire alarm detected smoke. The lead officer kept his weapon up. Heavy smoke from a non-human resident. We have to investigate. There's no fire. Look. Owen gestured at the stove. Just cooking. Different species, different food preparation methods. It's all controlled. The officers looked uncertain. One lowered his weapon. The other kept scanning the apartment like he expected to find something illegal. Rasha stood frozen, feeling her children press against her legs, hearing Nira's frightened whimper. This is a human residential sector, the lead officer said. Cooking methods need to comply with safety standards. I'll modify the kitchen ventilation. Owen's voice was calm, but firm. Tonight. Right now. It'll handle any cooking style. No more alarms. That work for you? The officers exchanged glances. Finally, they holstered their weapons. See that you do. We'll be checking. They left, but not before giving Rasha a look that said they'd be watching. Silence filled the apartment after they left. Pip was shaking. Sewell had tears on his face. Nira clung to Rasha's leg, too scared to cry. I'm sorry. Rasha's voice was barely a whisper. I didn't know. I should have asked. I should have. Stop. Owen pulled his toolkit from his belt. This isn't your fault. Station regs should account for different species, but they don't. We fix it. Right now. He worked on the kitchen ventilation system while Rasha held her children. His hands moved quickly, modifying connections, rerouting airflow, upgrading filters. Within an hour, he'd rebuilt the system to handle high-heat cooking without triggering alarms. Try again. Owen stepped back. Rasha hesitated. Maybe I should cook something else. No, cook your food. Your way. That's why you have a home. So you can live like yourself, not like someone you're not. She restarted the cooking, and this time no alarm sounded. The smoke vented properly. The apartment stayed warm and safe. Owen sat with the children while she worked, showing Pip how the ventilation modifications worked, letting Sewell examine his tools, making Nira laugh by pretending the sonic driver was a magic wand. When the food was ready, they sat together at the small table. Owen tried the spiced meat and his eyes watered from the heat, but he kept eating anyway. Pip told a story about the tent that seemed funny now that they had walls. Sewell drew a picture of their new home. Neera fell asleep with food on her face. "Thank you," Rasha said quietly, "for staying, for fixing the kitchen, for not making us feel like we don't belong." "You do belong," Owen's voice was certain. "This is your home now. We just have to teach the rest of the station that." Later, after Owen left and the children slept in real beds, Rasha stood at the window. The station garden spread below, green and growing under artificial lights. Tomorrow would bring new challenges. But tonight her children slept warm and safe behind solid walls. It was a start. 3 weeks passed before the official notice arrived. Rasha stared at the document on her datapad, reading the same words over and over. Housing Board review. Verification of residency status. Inspection scheduled. Her claws trembled slightly as she held the device. "What's wrong?" Owen looked up from the pump he was repairing. "They're investigating. The Housing Board. Someone filed a complaint." She showed him the notice. "Says there are concerns about safety violations and proper authorization." Owen's jaw tightened as he read. "This is about the fire alarm incident. Someone's using it to cause trouble. We should leave. Before you lose your business license or get fined. Before this becomes a real problem." Rasha was already mentally packing their belongings, planning their return to the refugee district. "No." Owen set down his tools. "We're not running. This is legal. You have a valid contract. You're a resident paying rent and maintaining the building. They can inspect all they want." But fear had already taken root in Rasha's chest. She'd seen this before. Officials finding reasons to remove people they didn't want around. Legal contracts that somehow became invalid when they were inconvenient. She'd been a citizen once with rights and status. It hadn't protected her when the bombs fell. The inspection happened 2 days later. A bored-looking official walked through the apartment with a checklist, pointing out imagined violations. The climate control was set too high. The kitchen modifications weren't properly documented. The children's belongings created clutter that posed safety risks. Everything was wrong, even though nothing was actually broken. Draconid families require different structural accommodations, the inspector said, making notes. This unit wasn't designed for your species. Fire risks, temperature regulation issues, potential damage to station property. The unit is functioning perfectly. Rasha kept her voice level. All systems are maintained above standard. I can show you the maintenance logs. The board will review everything. The inspector's tone made it clear he'd already decided. You'll receive notice of our determination within 10 days. After he left, Rasha stood in the middle of their home, feeling it slip away. Pip came out of his bedroom where he'd been hiding during the inspection. Are we going back to the tent? I don't know, little flame. That night, Owen didn't go home to his own apartment. He sat at the kitchen table with his comm device, calling everyone he knew. Other mechanics, engineers, people he'd helped over the years. By morning, he'd built something Rasha didn't recognize at first. Support, community, people willing to stand up and say this wasn't right. Station workers are organizing, Owen explained over breakfast. Not just humans. Krillians, Vorians, everyone who's been helped by refugee workers. They're going to the housing board. That will just make more trouble for you. Rasha's scales showed dark stress patterns. They'll target your business next. Let them try. Owen's voice was hard. I'm tired of watching good people get pushed around because they don't have the right paperwork or the right species classification. The hearing happened faster than expected. The housing board convened in a public session, and the room filled with people Rasha had never met. Workers from across the station, families, engineers, even some of the building residents from Section 14. The official complaint came from a group calling themselves Station Heritage Preservation. Their representative was a thin human man with cold eyes who spoke about protecting human culture and maintaining proper species boundaries. These living arrangements create safety concerns, he argued. Mixing species in residential areas leads to conflicts. We've already seen fire alarms triggered, inappropriate cooking methods, cultural clashes. It's not sustainable, Owen stood to respond. His hands were steady as he pulled up documentation on the display screen. This is Rasha's maintenance record for the past 2 months. She's repaired life support systems in 3 residential buildings, Fixed critical heating failures. Upgraded safety systems that were ignored for years. The station runs better because she's here. That's irrelevant to housing policy. It's completely relevant. She's a skilled engineer contributing to station safety. Her children attend station schools. They're integrated into the community. Denying them housing doesn't protect anything. It just punishes people for being different. The heritage representative smiled coldly. Rules exist for reasons. Housing is designated by species for compatibility. Exceptions create precedents we can't control. Then Pip stood up. Rasha tried to pull him back down, but he was already walking to the front of the room, 8 years old and too brave for his own good. Can I say something? The board chairwoman looked surprised but nodded. Briefly, we lived in a tent before, in the cold place downstairs where nobody goes. My little sister was always sick. My brother didn't talk much because he was too cold to think. I thought that was just how life was. Pip's voice was small but clear. Then Owen helped us. Not because he had to, because it was right. He gave us a home, real walls and warm beds. Now Nira isn't sick anymore. Sul has friends. I'm learning engineering at school. Isn't that what homes are for? Making people better? Silence filled the room. The heritage representative opened his mouth to respond, but the board chairwoman raised her hand. We'll review all evidence and testimony. Decision will be announced within 3 days. Walking back to the apartment, Rasha held Pip's hand tightly. Sol walked on her other side. Owen carried Nira, who'd fallen asleep during the hearing. They didn't talk about what might happen, didn't discuss backup plans or return to the tent. They just walked home together. That evening, neighbors from their building stopped by. The elderly human couple from Unit 45 brought food. A young Vorian family from Unit 38 offered to testify if needed. The single father from Unit 51, whose heating system Rasha had fixed, said he'd filed a letter of support. Why are you all doing this? Rasha asked. The elderly human woman smiled gently. Because you fixed our climate control when management ignored us for months. Because your boy helped my grandson with his math homework. Because this building is better with you in it. That's what neighbors do. After everyone left, Rasha stood in the kitchen looking at the home they'd built over these few short weeks. Pictures Sul had drawn on the wall. Pip's collection of mechanical parts on a shelf. Nira's toys scattered on the floor. It looked lived in. It looked loved. Owen found her there. Whatever happens, we'll figure it out. You've done too much already. Not nearly enough. His voice was soft. You gave me something too, you know. A reason to use this place again. To remember that homes are meant to be filled with life. 3 days felt like forever, but they passed. The decision came through official channels, delivered to Owen's comm device while they were all at the shop. He read it twice before showing Rasha. Approved. Conditional residency granted. Quarterly reviews required. It wasn't perfect. The conditions meant they'd be watched, judged, measured constantly. But it meant they could stay. They had a home. 6 months after the hearing, Rasha stood in the shop reviewing applications for a new position. The business had grown beyond what Owen could handle alone, even with her help. They needed another mechanic, preferably someone who understood multi-species equipment needs. This one looks good. She pointed to an application from a young Krillian who'd recently arrived on the station. Strong technical background, references from 3 different systems. Owen glanced at the application. No station experience, though. Housing board might question hiring another refugee, so we deal with it. Rasha's confidence had grown along with everything else. The quarterly reviews had become routine. She documented every repair, every contribution, every way their family integrated into station life. The housing board found nothing to complain about because there was nothing to find. Pip burst through the shop door, his school bag bouncing against his back. Mama, I got selected for the junior engineering program. That's wonderful, little flame. Rasha pulled him into a hug, feeling pride swell in her chest. The junior program was competitive. Only the best students were chosen. Sol followed more quietly, but his eyes shone. He'd won an art competition at school. His drawing of the station gardens now hung in the community center. Nira came last, holding Owen's hand and chattering about the park where they'd spent the afternoon. This had become their routine. Owen picked up the children after his maintenance rounds. They spent time together before Rasha finished work. Sometimes they ate dinner at the apartment. Sometimes Owen cooked at his own place and they ate there. The boundaries between his family and theirs had blurred into something neither of them had words for yet. Package came for you. Owen handed Rasha a sealed container. Official station seal. Looks important. Rasha's old fear flickered briefly. Official packages usually meant trouble, but she opened it calmly, aware of the children watching. Inside was a data chip and a letter on formal station letterhead. She read it once, then again, not quite believing the words. What is it? Owen leaned closer. Citizenship application. Her voice sounded distant to her own ears. They're offering expedited processing. Based on my contributions to station infrastructure and community integration. Owen's face split into a wide smile. That's amazing. It requires interviews, background verification, skills assessment. Could take months. Rasha was already thinking through the process, identifying potential problems. Old habits died hard. So we'll prepare. Owen said it simply, like it was obvious they'd do this together. You've already got documentation of everything you've done. References from half the station. This is doable. That night after the children slept, Rasha sat with the citizenship application on her datapad. Formal questions about her past, her skills, her intentions for the future. Years ago, she'd been a citizen of her homeworld with all the rights and protections that implied. Then war had stripped it away, made her a refugee, a person without status or standing. Now she had a chance to be someone again. Not just someone surviving on the edges, but an actual member of this community with legal protection and recognized value. She began filling out the application, answering each question carefully and honestly. The process took 4 months. Interviews with station officials who asked about her engineering background. Practical assessments where she solved complex technical problems. Background checks that verified her identity and history. Each step felt like a test she might fail, but Owen was right. She had documentation of everything. The building residents wrote letters of support. Her customers provided testimonials. Even some of the station administrators who'd initially opposed her housing arrangement admitted her work was exceptional. Pip helped her prepare for the technical interviews, quizzing her on station systems. Sul made her flashcards with important information. Neera drew pictures of their family to calm Rasha's nerves before each appointment. The final decision came on a cold morning. Rasha was repairing a heating unit when her comm device chimed with an official notification. She stared at it for a long moment before opening the message. Approved. Citizenship granted. Rights and protections effective immediately. She stood in the shop holding the comm device, feeling something shift inside her chest. Not relief exactly. Something deeper. Recognition, belonging, the acknowledgement that she was part of something again. Rasha? Owen had been watching from his workbench. What is it? Citizen. The word felt strange in her mouth. I'm a citizen. Owen crossed the shop in 3 strides and pulled her into a hug. His warmth reminded her that belonging wasn't just about official status. It was about the people who fought for you, who stood beside you, who saw your value when others looked away. We should celebrate. Owen stepped back, smiling. Dinner tonight, everyone, proper celebration. They gathered at the apartment that evening. The children wore their best clothes. Owen brought food from the expensive vendor 3 levels up. Rasha cooked traditional dishes that no longer triggered fire alarms because the kitchen system was designed to handle them. Neighbors stopped by with congratulations. The elderly couple from Unit 45. The Vorian family from 38. The single father from 51 whose son had become Pip's best friend. Their home filled with people from different species, different backgrounds, all celebrating together. Pip made a speech about how proud he was of his mother. Sol presented her with a drawing of their family that included Owen now. Neera climbed into Rasha's lap and announced that they should have cake every day forever. Later, after everyone left and the children slept, Owen helped Rasha clean up. They worked in comfortable silence, moving around each other with the ease of long practice. What happens now? Owen asked, drying the last dish. Now we live. Rasha looked around their home. Real walls, warm beds, children who were healthy and happy and safe. We work, we grow, we build something permanent. Together? Yes, together. Owen smiled, and in that smile Rasha saw the future they were creating. Not the future she'd planned before the war. Not the life she'd lost. Something different and unexpected and good. She thought about the tent in the lower decks, about the desperate fear of each cold night, about not knowing if her children would survive to adulthood. That life seemed impossibly distant now, though only months had passed. "Thank you," she said quietly, "for keeping your promise, for giving us a home. You gave me one too." Owen's voice was equally soft. I'd forgotten what it felt like. Having people to care about, being part of something. Through the window, the station gardens glowed with artificial sunlight. Tomorrow Rasha would return to the shop, would repair systems and solve problems and train the new Krillian mechanic they'd hired. Pip would attend his junior engineering classes. Sul would work on his next art project. Nira would go to preschool and come home with stories about her friends, ordinary things, simple things, the kind of life Rasha had thought she'd lost forever. But here in this home with these people, she'd found something even better. Not the life she'd had before, but a new life built from hope and hard work and humans who kept their promises. She was home. They all were, and this time the walls were solid enough to last.